So a recent Politico story revealed that far more Democrats than Republicans are requesting mail-in ballots in some extremely key battleground states.
And in a recent Washington Post poll, 61% of respondents say that they would prefer to vote early. Only 32% say they would prefer to vote by mail, which is up by 12 points from 2016.
So Team Rising is back to discuss the edge that Democrats have when it comes to mail-in balloting, as well as the push for people to vote early. Democratic strategist and council member at large of Montgomery County, Will Jawando, and Capitol Hill reporter for the Daily Caller, Henry Rogers, joins us now. So let me give you a few, Henry, I'll start with you, numbers from this Politico story. In North Carolina and Pennsylvania, they say that Democrats have a roughly 3-to-1 advantage over Republicans in terms of absentee ballot requests. So people just saying, like, I want an absentee ballot. In Florida, obviously a must win for President Trump in particular. Democratic lead stands at more than 700,000 ballot requests thus far. Now, of course, what the Trump team says is, yeah, but our people are going to show up in droves on Election Day. It's going to overcome that disadvantage. We've actually seen that happen in a couple of different districts. So what do you make, though, of their overall strategy of pushing people to vote in person rather than aggressively advocating for and organizing for the early vote the way the Democrats have?
Yeah, well, Crystal, I'm not surprised by these numbers at all, just because of what you've been saying. The Trump campaign has, and Trump himself have been actively telling Republican voters to basically not vote by mail for over 6 months to a year now. So that's a problem firsthand. And weighing into my earlier point from last segment, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was pushing for this in the House, saying, we need these older people to show up. So I don't think that you can just rely on the voters to turn out on Election Day and not rely on mail-in voting, especially with this pandemic going on and everything else going on in this world. But I will say also that I do think all of these voters have already made their minds up, and I don't think that there's going to be a lot of shifting going on towards the last final weeks here, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Will, let's get you in here because I think these mail-in numbers are pretty wild. One of the things that actually struck me was that 175,000 Democrats in the state of Pennsylvania who sat out the last race have actually requested mail-in ballots. And as I understand it, that's more than the margin by Trump actually won the state back in 2016. Yeah. Do you think that this is going to end up being a large political liability for the president?
I think we're going to be here 6 months from now saying that this issue might have lost the presidency for Trump and won it for Democrats. It's true that mail-in voting traditionally is a Democratic advantage, early voting. That's always been the case. But the factor that's never happened before is this pandemic. And the seniors of all, Democrat and Republican, but many Republicans who are worried about coronavirus are reading Bob Woodward's books or the quotes that the president knew about it and didn't care. Have also, then you have the combined depression of early voting and saying that it's fixed and don't do it, into Republican base voters who were going to do and follow the president, that 30% or so. And I think you have this perfect brew for low turnout for Republicans on Election Day, lower than they're going to need to win. Democrats have been turning out. They're excited. The message has been consistent. Turn out, vote early, from Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, all the way down, Biden, Kamala Harris. Vote early, get your ballot. And that's been a consistent message. And I think this could be something that the election turns on. You look at those Pennsylvania numbers, those Florida numbers, these swing states, those are huge numbers.
Yeah, well, and those are numbers, even if these are people that have, usually early voters are people who are most unmovable, right? They know that they're going to vote for Joe. They know they're going to vote for Trump. They're not going to change their mind between now and Election Day. That's why they feel comfortable voting early. But that still means you have those votes in the bank, so you can focus on persuading and turning out your swing voters. Henry can add some more numbers to this mix, which is that partisan divide. This is from the Washington Post on how people feel about voting early. And overwhelmingly, Democrats are saying, we would prefer to vote before Election Day, 70%. The numbers for Republicans look a lot different. 48%, I think, versus 70% it says there. So there's a huge partisan gap. What I want to get your thoughts on, Henry, are, okay, so we have this potential scenario, and Bloomberg's group actually laid out this scenario, but it does make some sense, where the election day vote will likely go strongly for President Trump because he's been saying don't vote mail-in, it's fraudulent, it's not your ballot's never going to show up, vote in person. So the day of vote could go strongly for President Trump. And then as these mail-in ballots come in, it could completely shift the picture. Do you think that President Trump's base, if that is what actually happens, like, do you think they're just going to accept that, or do you see that as a potential source of ugly and possibly frightening conflict?
Oh, I think it will be ugly and frightening, honestly, regardless of what happens with this election at the end. But I do think that Trump, and I said this early on, did make a huge mistake by leading this message of, oh, let's completely push off voting by mail. Let's act like it's fraudulent. Let's say it's a Democratic strategy to rig the election. I do think that this is going to end up hurting President Trump drastically in this election, and I think that it's too late now, in all honesty, to let that happen. I think they have to depend on their droves of crowds of people to show up for them on election day, or they're going to have Joe Biden just completely tank in the debates, which is likely.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. We have no idea there. And Will, let me weigh in on that scenario and pose it to you on the other side. Hillary Clinton has come out and said Biden should not concede the election under any circumstances. We've learned a lot about this thing called the Transition Integrity Project and a lot of other high-minded D.C. folks making plans just in case that Trump won't concede the election. A lot of it reads like coup to me. I mean, do you see a world where what if the results are close? It could be a hanging Chad mess that you alluded to, trying to get ballots discounted and more.
Well, I think number one, our democracy is the most important thing, that we maintain the integrity. And look, I've learned long ago, especially over these last 4 years, to not say that anything is not possible. And so I think every vote needs to be counted. I think there needs to be preparations made for that to happen. The language from the president that, certain votes after certain days, aren't going to count and this and that. And again, attacking the mail-in votes and as if they don't count in the middle of a pandemic, which he knew about but didn't care. I think all that is building for potential conflict. But I do think democracy will win out. We have always had good transitions of power. I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail, and people around the president, should he lose, will make sure that we continue the tradition of smooth and democratically elected presidents transitioning power to the next president.
I love your optimism, Will. I wish I shared it.
Yeah, me too.
Appreciate both you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Next on Rising, yesterday's jobs numbers and the inequity of remote work. We're going to talk about all of that when Rising continues.